call my mother to say I want to come home and I'm pregnant. My mother said I must stay away. I must never come back.
The more vulnerable you are in your home situation, the more vulnerable you'll be in this exploitation. You get tricked, you get transported, you get trapped, and eventually you get used.
Seeing the pimps around there, they're like enslaved, really enslaved. They don't have a choice.
If you don't want to go, they'll beat you well. And you still have to go out after they beat you. One day, this man gonna kill me. He won't let me get out. You can be pregnant, you have a child of him, you still go back to the street.
These guys are the toughest criminals around, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly how to make you as dependent as possible. 95% it will be with drugs.
The other one is a very complicated drug. You must smoke it so it doesn't give you time to think about anything important in your life.
So most of the prostitute, I would say 90%, is actually being tricked or trafficked in some kind. So they're really in slavery.
You're being transported, and often to a place where you don't even speak the language, you can't even ask for help.
Then they say those girls, they may be from Joburg, then they take you to Bloemfontein. Or they say they're from Joburg, then they take you to Pretoria.
These kids are being raped, that they are being abused day and night.
If I bring the cops there, they will kill me personally. Never you can talk.
And this is somebody else's daughter, somebody else's child. That person had dreams, hoping that my child will be an artist one day. My child will be a doctor.
A social worker. That was my dream.
Meanwhile, your child is a prostitute on the street, and so her life has been destroyed. It has been stolen away from her. The money that they make, they give to their pimps, and they get beaten every day. They get abused by the pimps, they get abused by the police, and they get abused by the clients.
So I have sex with him, and he take his money back, he put a gun against my head.
Sometimes guys pick them up, and there's like six or eight boys waiting, and they rape her, and some of the girls get even pointed with knives.
I can't handle it again. I had enough.
And they're just living for survival. They've lost hope in life. They're outcast, they're rejected. I know when they have an encounter with Jesus, their life will never be the same. It's only by the grace of God that we can totally set them free.
This is the worst that can happen to a person. Human beings should not ever be for sale.
I just want to live this life. I don't want to go on.
Actress Ashley Judd has traveled across the globe to raise awareness on human trafficking. She's spoken with victims of sexual slavery, and she's seen firsthand the damage it causes. And she's written about it in her new memoir. It's called All That Is Bitter and Sweet. Ashley, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Good morning.
You have seen the consequences of human trafficking up close and personally. How bad is it?
Well, I am appreciative of the way you introduced the topic. It is, in fact, the second largest industry in the world. And what Americans may not realize is that the slave trade right now is far greater than it ever was at its very height in the 19th century. And I appreciate your focus on sex slavery, but labor slavery is a huge problem both domestically and worldwide as well. And by the time we're done today, I hope that we'll give Americans some really good awareness about the difficulty of sex and labor slavery in this country and some resources that they personally can access to become modern-day abolitionists.
How can this happen to people, Ashley? I know that it happens in different ways in different countries. What are some of the things that actually force people into sexual slavery specifically?
Well, it is an issue of both supply and demand. Demand really drives it, though. There are men who want to buy sex. They want coerced, forced, prostituted sex with children and adults, girls, boys, men, and women. And I really think that Christians in particular have an extraordinary moral responsibility to place the focus on demand and abolish demand and say it is not okay to buy sex off anyone. On the supply side, it's really poverty, disempowerment, and gender inequality that place girls and women in particular in a position of forced prostitution. Sometimes there's something called the choiceless choice. I've met a lot of women in the 13 countries in the global south to which I've traveled, spending a lot of times in brothels and slums and forcibly displaced persons camps and makeshift schools and clinics that in this country would actually be condemned buildings, and in hospices, literally holding people who are dying from preventable diseases that they've contracted during slavery. And the choiceless choice is a mother who has had more children than she can possibly feed, who's unable to prevent, diseases that she contracts with a mosquito bite, such as malaria. And in order to survive and feed herself, she may be forced into economic prostitution. And so there are a lot of points of insertion where we can disrupt this cycle of poverty and violence. Economic empowerment of girls and women, making sure that girls in particular have access to education, improvements to public health, and, as I said, demand abolition, making it not okay for anyone, anywhere, anytime to buy sex.
You know, we mentioned in the piece that we showed just before I introduced you that very often the very people in government that you think would be helping some of these women and some of these children are in fact a part of the problem. On one of your trips, you went to Thailand. You actually sat down and spent time with 6 prostitutes there. Tell us about what you learned from them, what they had to say, what it spoke to you about.
Well, there's been a really good recent study conducted by a woman named Melissa Farley. It's a multi-country study of women in forced prostitution, and well over 90% said that their most urgent need was to get out of prostitution. And the average age of entry into prostitution in this country is between 12 and 14, and the overwhelming majority of all prostitutes have been sexually abused in childhood, often through incest. So it is those abuses of authority and position that set girls and women up to be forced into prostitution. That is true whether it's in Thailand or in the United States of America. And a lot of times it's that economic asymmetry where this person has the economic power and this person, the girl or woman, does not. And it's that abuse of power that perpetuates sex and labor slavery.
You talk about, in the book, you talk about going to Goma in the Congo, and there women are being abused terribly, maybe more horribly than any place I've ever heard of in the world. And it has to do with politics. Talk about that.
It does. It has to do with politics, and it also has to do with North American consumption patterns. I am, I use the word sort of jokingly, but hey, there's a little grain of truth in it. I'm kind of addicted to my electronics, to my computer and my iPhone. And the things inside of my electronics that make it light up, that make it beep, that allow it to, show me what I'm typing on the screen are called the 3 T's. They are minerals that are found in vast abundance in the Democratic Republic of Congo: tin, tantalum, and tungsten. And every time I buy one of those products, I am contributing to conflict mineral mining in Congo. And what the armed militias are doing, who want to access that vast mineral wealth, is raping girls and women in particular. They are using gender violence to create instability, to literally clear villages and villagers off the land so they may have unimpeded access to that mineral wealth. And, they say Congo is the worst place in the world to be a woman, and it's gallows humor, but I say, gee, I didn't know there was a place worse than Yemen. Well, guess what? Congo is worse. And I was just thinking this morning about 4 beautiful teenage girls with whom I spent a lot of time, their names, because the Bible is so clear about, we have to name them. People are people, particularly when we give them the dignity of their name. And their names are Solange, Kavira, Patience, Kika, and Stuka. And all 4 of these girls are already survivors of multiple gang rapes by armed militia. Some of them had conceived by their rapists, and they all had severe internal injuries. both because their pelvises were not adequately formed yet, they are very young, they're not prepared to bear children, and through what I call insertion rape. They have internal injuries from things like bayonets and sticks. And we can be a part of the solution in this country by demanding that companies, our electronics providers, certify that they have obtained the minerals in our favorite electronics without engaging in conflict mining. So folks can go to Hope for Congo and sign a petition. There was some progress made in the last big financial reform package that was passed last summer. This process is very similar to the blood diamond certification. Now, every company listed on the American Stock Exchange must trace and audit its mineral sources. It's required that they tell us as Americans where the minerals have come from. The final step is the certification, so that you and I can make a moral choice when we buy our electronics and choose the products that are conflict-free. I don't want to contribute to the rape of more girls like Kavira, Patience, Stuka, Kika, and Solange. And I know that other Christians don't either.
You say in your book that you have a sensitivity to sexual exploitation of any kind because of your own abuse as a child. Tell us about that.
And I also should add, you know, I have a sensitivity to it because I just breathe the air of humanity. But definitely, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and rape. And by the grace of God and doing a lot of hard work in my recovery, I can say today that I have no shame. I have given the shame back to the perpetrators. It was never mine to begin with. But I had to get into good recovery to learn that, because a perpetrator is shameless when they sexually aggress. And in that act of sexual aggression, they put the shame that should have been theirs onto the vulnerable, defenseless child. And we have to get into good recovery and group up with other survivors of traumatic sexual experiences to learn how to give that shame back. And one of the reasons, another reason I should say, in addition to the fact that today I can say I'm a survivor and have no shame, that it's important to me to talk about it because every 45 seconds in this country, a girl or woman is sexually aggressed upon. It's very common. 3 American women will die today at the hands of their intimate partners. We have a gender violence problem in this country, as well as a responsibility morally to do what we can to stop gender violence worldwide.
Well, your book is incredibly well written. I want to mention again that it's called All That Is Bitter and Sweet. It's available in bookstores around the country. Ashley, thank you so much for being with us. You know, she also says that our painful past has become our greatest asset. And if we will give God that pain, there is recovery on the other side of it. But we do need to take an active role in stopping everything we can where people are being inappropriately treated in this kind of way. Ashley Judd, thank you so much for being with us and for your book.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pat?
Ashley.